phoenix is a bird associated with the worship of sun. The story of the phoenix is legendary and famous, and it is one of the most well-known myths in the modern day. The legend is famous for many elements it is said to concern, like rebirth, life, death, creation and destruction, and even time itself. Okay, so now let's talk about what does it look like. So the phoenix is known to be one of the most beautiful and perfect creatures in the world. It is associated in most cultures with the color red and gold. That's why I did my makeup today this way. It's a little extra for me. But okay, I tried to match it with the vibe. And the creature itself is associated with paradise and everything good. The creature itself stood out because of its beautiful feathers. Now, in Greek mythology, it was associated with the color purple, possibly because of the territory called Phoenicia. I hope I'm saying it right. So the territory of Phoenicia was known for its beautiful purple dyes. You might have heard about how the color purple was extremely hard to obtain, and it was so expensive that pretty much only royalty could buy it. So some people believe that the name Phoenix is a way of referencing the color purple. There are many works of art inspired by Phoenix, and usually it was portrayed with yellow, red, or purple color. There are also several variations of the bird's eyes. Usually it's bright yellow, but in some versions they claim that the eyes were actually like two shining sapphires. Alright, pretty much every story emphasizes the size of the creature. This creature is enormous, and some people believe that it was actually inspired by a giant bird that we no longer have today in the present world, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. Alright, now let's talk about where does it live. So there are several versions of the tale of Phoenix, but most versions say that Phoenix resides in paradise. This land is said to be the most perfect land that was beyond the sun and was sometimes considered the representation of heaven. However, there are other versions of the stories that claim that Phoenix is actually living somewhere else. So one location that was claimed to be the home of Phoenix was Heliopolis, which was the city of the sun. And it may be because Heliopolis was where the phoenix was entombed after its death. In some versions of the story, it's also where the phoenix was reborn, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes. The Greeks also claimed that Phoenix was actually living in Arabia next to a well. And according to their records, the phoenix bathed itself in the well every morning at dawn and sang a song so beautiful that Apollo had to stop his chariots in the sky to listen to the song. Alright, now let's talk about the first version of the story. So the phoenix, like all other creatures who live in paradise, was known to live a very good life. It was a land of unimaginable perfection and beauty, and was said to exist somewhere beyond the brilliance of the sun. However, sometimes once every thousands of years, the bird began to feel the effects of its age, and he had to move on. As the phoenix was known to live in a paradise, was also known that it could never truly die. However, it was possible for the creature to be reborn. And this is exactly what happened. So the creature was reborn again. So first the phoenix flew into the mortal world. It was necessary for it to leave paradise so it could be reborn again. So he had to enter our world to be reborn. It flew west until it reached spice groves that grew in Arabia, and it stopped there to collect some finest herbs and spices, mostly cinnamon, before continuing its journey to Phoenicia, which was likely named after the creature. Once the phoenix reached Phoenicia, it built its nest of herbs and spices it had gathered and waited for the sun to rise. The next morning, when the sun began to drag his chariot across the sky, the phoenix would turn east to face him. As the sun rose above the horizon, it would then sing one of the most beautiful and haunting melodies known to a man, so perfect that even the sun god had to pause and listen to it. We already talked about it basically. When the phoenix finished its farewell song, the sun god readied his chariots and continued his journey across the sky. This caused a spark to fall down from the sky, and it ignited the nest of herbs and the phoenix in flames. All that was left was a tiny worm. This, however, was not the end of the cycle. After three days, a new phoenix would rise from the ashes, supposedly transformed from the worm, and it began the next cycle of thousands years. It would carry the remaining ashes of its parent to the great Heliopolis and then return to paradise until its cycle came to an end. Alright, now let's talk about some alternate versions. So, the story I just told you is pretty much the most common version of the rebirth of the phoenix. But, like I said, there are some other alternate versions as well. So the first one is that instead of flying to Phoenicia to end its cycle of life, the phoenix flew to Heliopolis and gave itself to the fires of the Sun City. From these fires, the new phoenix emerged and then flew back to the land of paradise. Another version of the story tells that the phoenix completes its journey as described. So from paradise to Arabia to Phoenicia, and then dies with the rising of the sun the next morning. The body begins to decompose, and most versions of this story claim that it took three days, and once it reached its final stages of decomposition, the new phoenix emerged from the remains of the first. And finally, there is a lesser known version of the story that claims that phoenix begins to show the signs of age when it reaches the final years of its lifespan. It flies to the mortal world, losing many of its beautiful feathers, and also it loses the lovely coloration along the way. When it finished building its nest, it sets itself on fire, similar to the first version, allowing the next phoenix to come forward. Alright, now let's talk about the burial process. So when the new phoenix comes into the next cycle of life, the first thing it does is that it creates a cremation egg to place its predecessor's remains inside. So to do this, the phoenix flies off and begins to gather the finest myrrh it can find to form into a ball. It gathers as much as it can carry, and then it flies back to the nest it emerged its ashes inside. Once it had gathered all the ashes and put them inside the egg, it seals the opening in the cremation egg with myrrh and carries the remains back to Heliopolis. It leaves the remains on top of an altar in the temple of Ra, and then begins its new life by flying back to the land of paradise. Alright, now let's talk about where do these legends of the phoenix actually came from. So the majority says that it originated in Greek mythology, but also some sources say that it actually originated in the Egyptian mythology. It's not exactly known. However, I will tell you the story of the Egyptian mythology and you can decide if you think it originated from that. So in the Egyptian mythology there was a god called Bennu. God, deity, however you want to call it. So Bennu symbolizes rebirth, and it rises from its ashes like a new sun rises when the old has died. The creature called Bennu was known to be a bird that was very similar to a heron. It is said that Bennu had created itself from the fire that burned on top of the sacred Persea tree in Heliopolis. Another story says that the heron Bennu was the first life form that have appeared of the mound which rose from the watery chaos of the first creation, which links Bennu to the Nile and its periodical floods. The mound was called the Ben, and was the origin of the town of Heliopolis. Bennu is one way or another the personification of the creation and life force. After 500 years, according to Herodotus, Bennu flew to the Sun Temple in Heliopolis to build its funeral pyre with incense twigs. It then climbed onto it and waited for the sun's rays to consume it, and it sang a song of a rare beauty. According to Pliny, from the ashes emerged a small worm that the sun's rays turned into a new Bennu at the end of the day. It is also said that the new phoenix rose immediately from the ashes and flew its predecessor's embalmed remains to Heliopolis, accompanied by a flight of turtle doves. Bennu was said to have lived on top of stones and obelisks and was worshipped by the people of ancient Egypt, similar to the way which Osiris and Ra were worshipped. In fact, it was thought that Bennu was a living symbol of the god Osiris. Bennu was thought to have symbolized the flooding of Nile, which was known to bring wealth and fertility to the land. Because of this, it was one of the most respected creatures in the Egyptian mythology. Additionally, the cycle of birth and rebirth is identical to that of the phoenix. However, the timeline is different because phoenix is born once every 1,000 years. However, Bennu was reborn once every 500 years. Alright, now let's look into East Asian mythology because the phoenix plays a huge part in it, so of course I have to mention it. So let's start with the Chinese mythology. However, the Korean, Chinese, Vietnamese, all of these mythologies are closely linked together. So in China there is a creature called Feng Huang. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, probably not. And it is a mythological bird that reigns all over all other birds. The males were originally called Feng and females Huang, but over time the distinction of gender is often no longer made and they're blurred into a single feminine entity that is often paired with the Chinese dragon. Chinese dragon is usually deemed male Chinese it's Feng Huang. In Japanese it's Ho-o. And in Korean it's Bong Huang. Alright, the Feng Huang is also called the August rooster since it sometimes takes place of the rooster in the Chinese zodiac. Alright, according to the legend, mostly from China, Ho-o or Feng Huang appears very rarely and only it appears to mark a beginning of a new era. So for example, when a virtuous ruler was born. In other traditions, it appears only in peaceful and prosperous times, and it's nesting in the Polonia trees, and it hides itself when there is trouble. As the herald of a new age, Ho-o or Bong Huang, or however you want to call it, descends from heaven to earth to do good deeds, and then it returns to its celestial abode to await a new era. It is both a symbol of peace when the bird appears and a symbol of disharmony when it disappears. In China, early artifacts show that the phoenix was intimately associated with the dragon, which was male, like I said. The two are portrayed either as mortal enemies or blissful lovers. When they are shown together, they symbolize both conflict and wedded bliss, and are a common design motif even today in many parts of Asia. In China, the phoenix was a symbol of Chinese empress, the same way that a dragon was a symbol of the Chinese emperor. It was also thought to represent feminine grace and sun. It is considered to be a good luck if a phoenix was spotted. It was known to symbolize the accession of a wise leader and a new era. The phoenix was also known to represent some of the most valued virtues like goodness, reliability, and kindness. It was introduced to Japan in the Asuka period, which was like mid 6th century to mid 7th century AD. The phoenix has a bird's beak, a swallow's jaw, a snake's neck, and the front half of its body is thought to resemble a giraffe, the back half a deer. Its back resembles a tortoise, and its tail is like a fish. It is often shown in the Polonia tree, with bamboo in the background. In Korea, this bird is known as Bong Huang, like I said already. Or also there is an alternate term, Bulsajo, or immortal bird. It is used to refer to the type of phoenix that never dies, with Bong Huang being reserved for the Asian variety. Bong Huang is often used within the royal emblem, especially for queens, and dragon being the emblem of the king. And also it appears twice in the current presidential emblem. Alright, now let's talk about the red bird, because this is a creature kinda different and it is often confused with Bong Huang. So let's talk about the red bird. The symbolism of the Chinese phoenix, which we talked about, is strikingly similar to the symbolism of the mythological red bird. Scholar Derek Waters says that the phoenix was supplanted or replaced by the red bird because the red bird more accurately reflected the astronomical iconography associated with the southern lunar mansions. So its home is in the southern sky. It spans 7 of the 28 Chinese constellations, taking up 1/4 of the sky. The constellations which make up the left wing of the bird is located in Gemini. The constellation which make up its head feathers or comb is located in Cancer. The constellation which make up his head, beak, and body are located in Hydra. The constellation which make up his right wing is located region which make up its tail feathers is located in Corvus. Alright, there are other names for this creature in other cultures as well. For example, in Japan it's called Suzaku, or in Korea it's called Chujak. So this red bird is one of the 4 legendary Chinese creatures guarding the 4 cosmic directions. So this is very, complicated, so I think I need to do like a separate video on that. But there's the red bird, which represents south, dragon, which represents east, tortoise represents north, and tiger represents west. The 4 appeared during China's Warring States period, which was in the time of 476 BC to 221 BC, and are frequently painted on the walls of the early Chinese and Korean tombs to ward off evil spirits. Alright, the Vermilion bird, or the red bird, represents the fire element, the direction of south, and the season summer correspondingly. Thus, it is sometimes called the Vermilion bird of the south. So in Japan, it is called Suzaku, and they were brought to Japan from China in the 7th century. They're strongly associated with Taoism, Feng Shui, and astrology, and the 5-element theory and other forms of Chinese mysticism. Japan's ancient capitals were actually built in correspondence to these beliefs, with each quadrant of the city dedicated to one of the 4 symbols. Excavation of ancient burial mounds in Nara has revealed paintings of Suzaku. Alright, it is often mistaken for Fenghuang due to similarities in appearance, but the 2 are different creatures. So the Fenghuang is a legendary ruler of birds who is associated with the Chinese empress in the same way that dragon was associated with the emperor. But the Vermilion bird is a mythological spirit creature of the Chinese constellations. Alright, now let's look into Jewish mythology. So, Jewish mythology also makes a reference to a creature that is believed to be the phoenix. In their version, it is called Milchem. So the story begins in the days where people were still allowed into the Garden of Eden. It is said when Eve gave into the temptations of the serpent and tempted Adam with the fruit. She also offered the fruit to other animals in the garden. The Milchem bird was among the animals that refused to partake in the eating of the fruit. It was therefore rewarded for its faithfulness. It was given a town where it could live in days out in peace eternally. Every 1,000 years, the Milchem bird would end one cycle of life, but it was actually immune to the angel of death because it had remained faithful to God, so it would be reborn again. Alright, now let's talk about Hindu mythology. So in Hindu mythology, there's a creature called Garuda. It is a bird or an eagle, and in the Rig Veda, the sun is compared to a bird in its flight across the sky. An eagle carries the Ambrosial plant from heaven to earth. The mythological account of Garuda's birth in the Mahabharata identifies him as the younger brother of Aruna, the charioteer of the sun god Surya. Garuda's mother Vinata was the mother of all birds and was tricked into becoming the slave of her sister Kadru, which was the mother of the serpents. So the lasting enmity between the birds and the serpents is attributed to this. The Nagas agreed to release Vinata if Garuda could obtain them a drink of the elixir of immortality. Garuda performed that feat, so the snakes had the ability to slough off their old skins. On his way back from the heaven associated with royalty in several Southeast Asian countries. Alright, now let's talk about Thunderbird. So Thunderbird is a legendary creature in certain North American indigenous people's history and culture. It is considered to be a supernatural being of power and strength. I was planning on making a separate video on the Thunderbird in the future, so now let's only talk about it a little bit. So Thunderbird is also thought to have close connections to the Phoenix, and similarly to Garuda, the Thunderbird is known to guard against the evil serpent figure, and it is thought of as a protector. The Thunderbird is said to create thunder by flapping its wings, or a lightning by flashing its eyes. Okay, now let's quickly talk about Slavic mythology, because there's also a creature called Firebird. So the Slavic Firebird has obvious ties to the Phoenix and was likely created in the Slavic folklore when the ancient cultures exchanged stories and legends on their trade routes. However, unlike many other cultures who told the story of the Phoenix, Firebird was depicted as a giant falcon instead of a peacock. It is thought that this is because the falcon symbolized the ultimate masculinity in the Slavic culture. The Slavic bird is also different from the traditional phoenix because of its life cycle. It actually symbolizes different seasons because the bird finishes its life cycle in the fall months, but it is revived again in spring. And its revival brings beautiful music that brings happiness and new life. Alright, now let's talk about some possible explanations for the creation of the Phoenix myth, like where did it come from? So the first explanation is linked to flamingos in the East Africa. So it is known that flamingos in East Africa live in area that is too hot for its young to survive. So because of this, it has to build a mound of earthen materials in order to elevate its nest so that the eggs and its hatchlings can survive the heat. It is said that the convection currents around the mounds created by this bird are similar to the movement of a flame, which could have been why the phoenix was associated with fire. Okay, some people believe that it was perhaps inspired by a species of megafauna that is no longer living. It is thought that the tail of phoenix then could be an embellishment that described an actual species of the bird back then. And last but not least, the most common source says that it was simply a metaphorical storytelling that was used to describe the spirituality of ancient cultures, because many of the cultures embraced the phoenix as a symbol of immortality or reincarnation, which is a very common theme in the religion. So it is likely that the story of the phoenix was created to give a more vivid depiction of the cycle of life and death. Alright, now let's quickly talk about some modern depictions. So I'm pretty sure you've heard about Harry Potter and the Phoenix in those stories, books, films, etc. It was a magnificent creature and its tears could actually heal wounds. The flag of San Francisco also features a phoenix in the center, and it is a symbolic of the city's rebuilding following the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. And also the Coventry University uses a phoenix rising from the flames as their emblem. And I forgot the legendary Pokemon Moltres and Ho-Oh. Alright, so that will be it for today's video. It's actually really windy outside, so I hope that the sounds were not bothering you too much. Thank you so much for watching. I'll try to make these mythology videos at least